this lecture, I want to take a look at one more part, which is the role of social media, communities, and volunteering during disasters, which to us is a very topical one right now. So let's talk a bit about why social media is so important in disasters. Well, first of all, there have been some changes. So social media and technology, as we talked about in this lecture, have enabled people to share content. But not only content, it also allows you to collaborate online and build virtual communities. So it is a technology that is becoming increasingly accessible, allows you to share content, allows you to work together, and allows you to build communities. Pretty much, same things we would do in our physical communities, connecting to people, working together, and create, a sense of community. On the other side, we see also a push for the government, at least in Western Europe, to become self-reliant and zelfredzaam. There's an increasing ask of people over the past years to be prepared, to be resilient. We're looking at transparency as well, so governments are sharing their data, are trying to be open. But at the same time, governments are very complex organizations and not always able to move well. So why, especially on this self-resilience, this transparency and this complex organization of a government, sort of encourage people to build their own collaboration, to build their own community, especially in times of need. So those are changes we've seen that drive the use of social media and virtual communities in disasters. That also means that your survival kit, if you have any at home, it may have looked like this, is changing. Your survival kit today consists of, for example, a mobile phone. Consists of your mobile phone, your connections on social media, the information you need to make decisions, and the community you have, whether it's physical or virtual. So all these four components, technology, content, information, communities, connections, can help you in a disaster. To give you an example, when we talk about these communities, and this is from a project in 2016 called COBACOR, you can have an affected community, that is the people in need. They're responding to those needs are organizations like the Red Cross or government agencies, the fire brigade, ambulances, police, that are people who are trained and have a mandate to and an objective to help people who are affected. So they respond to the affected community. Traditionally, responding professionals, they will see a need, they will assess what is needed by the affected community. The answers to that will feed the responding professionals with what we call situational awareness. This is what they need. This is the situation. And based on that, the responding professionals like government agencies provide those services or those materials to the affected community. So assessing what is needed builds situational awareness and allows people to develop a response. However, there is also a third group, the responding community. So those are people who are not trained but who want to help. Remember, throughout this lecture, I showed you several examples of communities that are being formed on social media that aim to help those who are affected by Corona. So those people are not per se people with a mandate or a daily objective or a training to help people in need, but they're using their skills, their networks to address needs that the affected community will have. So there is a new player in the market here, and that responding community. And social media has actually made it easier for these responding communities to be part of this because they can do the assessment as well. They can see what is needed by looking at social media. They can also respond to it and organize themselves. And that actually creates a challenge for people. And those challenges, we could break them down between these three groups into three collaborations. So one challenge is the affected community and the responding professionals. They need to exchange information. The responding professionals want to know what is needed by the affected community. So you need to assess their needs, and of course keeping in mind what has already been filled. So the next step is if people want to, next collaboration is between the people who are responding and the people who are affected. So the responding community wants to help the people who are affected, but there needs to be a match. Otherwise, there is a lot of unsolicited help. So responding communities need to understand what the affected community needs, and that needs to be matched. So you can use social media to understand these needs and assess what you could bring. So identify the gaps. And then the next challenge is, how do these responding professionals, organizations, connect with responding communities? And that's actually one of the biggest challenges, because responding communities, they can organize themselves online, they can create new communities, virtual communities, and they don't have a formal structure. They don't have an agency they report to. They make their own decisions. While responding organizations, they have very fixed procedures. They have very strict responses. So how do you integrate those two worlds? That's actually a challenge. And information here, exchanging and building a connection on social media, for example, is something that could help. You could inform communities who want to help about the needs of the affected people and steer their incentives in a certain direction. So again, think about the steps going from connections to communication to cooperation to collaboration. So those are the steps. If you are a responding organization or responding community, you also want to do here. Build a connection, start communicating about the needs, cooperate, give the information the other party wants, and then start collaborating by defining shared objectives. And in that whole process, social media can play an important role, both within the responding community, within the responding professionals, and between them, as well as the affected community. So that's the key thing. If we build these connections using social media, you can start integrating these things. So responding professional organizations, communities, and affected communities can use social media to build a connection, knowing who they are, where they are. 2, identify, communicate the needs, exchange information. The affected community can communicate their needs. The responding community can communicate what they contribute. And the responding professionals can contribute what they're doing. That's communication. The next step is cooperation, exchange that information, understand what the other person needs, and feed your information so they can reach their objectives. For example, the responding community could tell the affected community, this is what we could do for you, or here's the situation. And the final step would be collaboration. You define a shared objective. This is what is needed. This is what we're going to do. Can you help us? So again, in this crisis as well, if you want to use social media, if you are a volunteer group or you're a responding professional, don't only look at the technologies, don't only look at the marketing, branding, mass communication, but really look at these 4 steps of building a connection, communicating, cooperating, and then collaboration. And especially if you build this, you build resilient communities using social media, and you can use trained volunteers to support this process. I'll give you an example of this. This is a few websites that use Web 2.0 technologies to match people. So here you have a way, this is a Dutch one, NL voor elkaar. There is another one, Thuisleren. There's coronainitiative.nl, and even like on Facebook. So what do all these technologies have together? What do they have in common? Is that they allow you to make a connection. You can see who they are. You can connect with these people. The next step is you can communicate your needs. You can communicate what you can contribute. You start cooperating. You start looking at which initiatives can I contribute to. And the final step is you start collaborating. You're working in a goal together. And all the while you're using Web 2.0 technologies. You're using social media because you're building a community where a connection didn't exist before you're sharing content. So I will finish with this. The key considerations when you're in an organization, whether that's in a crisis response, whether you're an organization, whether you're a volunteer group or an NGO, is to make these considerations. If you're going to use social media technology and you want to go through these steps of connecting, communicating, cooperation, and collaboration, again, think about the 4 components of information systems. Technology. On which platforms are you and your customers or your clients or who you want to collaborate present? In this case, which platforms are the affected community, the responding community, and the affected profession and the responding professionals using? Then the data. What information are you looking for? What information can you gain? What information can you give? Especially in social media, their reciprocity is a key component. You don't only take information, you also contribute what you have. Think about this collaborative, crowdsourcing, collective intelligence components. So that brings you to people, because in the end, social media and virtual communities bleed over into, especially in a disaster, into the real world about people. What do you bring and what do you want to get from the platform? What is the incentive for other people to engage with you? What would they gain? What is the reciprocity? So really look at the people and as a whole, and what their incentives would be for you to connect with. And finally, if you're an organization, whether you're a new organization or you're a former organization, how do you follow up? Not just once-off messages, but do you have processes to follow up? Do you have processes to integrate the responses, to engage, to act on responses? If you are an emergency service and you're just posting stay safe and people start replying to you, but how do I stay safe? Do you have a way to integrate those questions into your response? So don't use social media, and I think that's the key part about when you talk about organization here, as a marketing thing or broadcast or a sensor, but really make it an extension of the things you're already doing and not just a standalone organization. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. In one of the next lectures, we're going to dive into a deeper subject. This time we talked about social media and the digital communities. Before we talked about online collaboration. In the next one, we're going to look at e-commerce and customer relationship, because now a lot of companies are making a sudden shift from their traditional business models to online selling, e-commerce, and struggling or inventing new ways to connect with their customers and customer relationship management. So in the next lecture, again, we're going to talk about information management in general. We're going to take a look at e-commerce and CRM in general, but then we're going to do a deeper dive in what that means in this crisis, and we'll try to organize a web panel again for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please stick around, watch the panel. We'll have a panel with Cindy Korpsen, Martijn Neef, Kees Boersma, and myself, where we're going to talk a little bit more about what we briefly touched upon the last part of this lecture. So we'll hope you stick around for that, and the link will be in the description below. Again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Kenny Meesters, lecturer at Tilburg University, and thank you for watching, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks.